Okay, welcome to another lecture in our project, program and portfolio series. Today we come to a topic that we have actually quite substantial expertise in. Yeah, so we have a few PhD students in this area, and traditionally, if you decide to research in that area, you will either be working with me or actually at our partner universities with relevant experts in that area. So a lot of this is actually relating directly to mine and our research, and I have even the luxury of showing a few insights from empirics from past MSc dissertations. So often when we research that, we put 3 to 4 MSc students on one of those topics, otherwise it's quite difficult to manage, but you will see that in a second. So actually I can put this on as well. So today's topic is really project knowledge management, and I want to really start with that because that is often a lot more applicable, especially to the project manager and to the team that is working in that scenario. So reading a little bit unusual. You can go as well for Harvey Mailer's chapter, but it concludes or it comprises already a lot of what we are covering next week as well. Next week we cover as well information management, particularly in the project management environment. And Harvey Mailer hasn't separated, so he has captured it in the same chapter, knowledge management and information management. But I find it very important to separate. I've given you a little bit reading. I've even one paper from a past student. Well, it was a shared effort, but it was her MSc dissertation. And we published that in the Social and Behavioral Science Journal. Yeah, so she has a pretty good overview there of relevant literature to the project setting. Yeah, so this is still something that we are trying to refine. Okay, let's get started. First of all, why do we need to know? Yeah, and why do we need people that know? Yeah? So slightly cryptic, but this is what I tried to answer in the first stage. And it has a background that is quite serious. Yeah? It has to do with imagination. So here it is. This was an apology letter from the most accomplished researchers in economy, business studies, statistics that are part of the British Society of, wait a minute, Academy of Economics, sorry, that way around, British Academy of Economics. And they wrote an apology letter to Her Majesty and saying something that was actually quite interesting for us. Yeah, so why do we need to know? That is what they wrote. So in summary, that is a section in between. I have it in the references. You can read the whole letter. It's very entertaining. It's one A4 sheet. Yeah. So in summary, Your Majesty, the failure to foresee the timing, extent and severity of the crisis and to head it off, while it had many causes, was principally a failure of the collective imagination of many bright people, both in this country, and then he starts blaming as well the rest of the world. Yeah. So, but why is this so important? Yeah. So there are things where we do not know, we haven't experienced it before, but we can actually inform our action from previous experience, and we have as well formalized notions of that. So what is knowledge really? Knowledge is neither data nor information. Yeah, so it relates to both. This is the way how we normally try to capture knowledge. Yeah? And the difference between these terms are often a matter of degree. We have a lot of bad science and bad literature in that area. Knowledge management often refers to information management. And it's an unclear use of terminology that has led to weird scenarios. Managing knowledge as such is just not possible. Yeah, this means that you have people as a resource, but we come to that as a second thing, and I have like certain criticism with that. So knowledge, nonetheless, data, information, and knowledge are not interchangeable concepts. Yeah, so when we come to that next week, where we look in detail at what data is and what information is, but today we focus on the knowledge. Quick brief, just so we are on the same page. What is usually data? How do we illustrate data? What is data?
Numbers?
Yeah, can be numbers. Yeah, can be symbols, and they normally represent something. Yeah, so we have a reference framework for that. What is information normally?
Collection of data.
Yeah, it's an interpretation of data. Yeah. So, for example, standard 1.43, yeah, can refer to many, but this is a standard size for a door in size. Yeah, so we fit in. So I've given you the context where that data makes actually sense. We have a closer look at it. So don't get carried away with this. Yeah, this is next week in detail. We unfold this. But here's a little bit a definition that is actually quite functional. Knowledge is a fluid mix of framed experience, values, contextual information, and expert insight that provides a framework for evaluating and incorporating new experiences and information. Yeah? So knowing has to do with experience. This is very important. It's kind of within you. Yeah? It originates and it is applied in the minds of the knowers. So if you experience something, you may be consciously aware of things. Yeah? So this is heavy. In organizations, it often becomes embedded not only in documents or repositories, but also in the organization's routines, processes, practices, and norms. So this is kind of what we witness as behavior, but we behave in that way because we have previous experience. We try to make sense. Yeah? Okay, quite heavy. I thought I'd try to ground it with a few famous quotes that we don't mix it up. So here they are. Albert Einstein famously observed that knowledge is experience and everything else is just information. Yeah, so to distinguish that. And if knowing is at all, it belongs solely to those entities which know. So that is slightly cryptic. Comes as well from a German, so you would expect that, Heidegger. He figured that out in 1927. Yeah, it's a very thorough read. It's Being and Time. Yeah, so that is actually something that some people just study as MSc. Yeah, so don't get carried away with this book. But the notion is that the knowledge is a personal attribute. Yeah. Okay, how do we know? We know, yeah? So this is slightly cryptic. It's a joke from Rumsfeld. Actually, he didn't make a joke. He really said this in a speech for justifying something. I had the quote before. But how do we know? We know, and the dilemma of not knowing what you don't know. Yeah? So this is two dimensions that we want to have a look at. And with this comes a certain notion of creation of knowledge. Yeah, this is normally shown in the literature as a duality or dichotomy, I actually use the term here, but it's basically the duality of knowledge, that there is an explicit notion. And that is quite easy. Yeah? The explicit notion is what we have experienced and what we can actually describe. Yeah, and the more conscious you are about this, yeah, so the more you were actually looking for describing this to somebody else, the more we can actually put this down into information. Yeah? So it's literally the know-how that can be described as information, maybe even refined as data. Yeah? So to be very accurate, a travel journey may be described in the distance that you have traveled. Yeah? And what vehicle you used, yeah? If you used a vehicle, yeah, or did you walk or something like that. Yeah, and then the more accurate you make it, the more you can filter it down. Yeah, so you could describe what the weather was like, what the effect on you was, how you felt. Was it a bumpy ride or was it like a smooth ride? Yeah, were you flying or were you walking? Yeah, so we can actually quantify that quite well into information that are meaningful to other people. Yeah, and this is the explicit way of doing it. And then we have a tacit notion. It's the unarticulated and it's certainly rooted in the experience and tied to the senses. Normally, such thing, a good example for project managers is the first time when you present your project in front of the whole company board. Yeah, and you do the first speech. You have trained many times, but there comes the whole experience in that is, even if you have practiced many times before, there is a tacit notion of that you cannot describe to the next person that will make the talk. It's a very personal, sensual experience potentially. Yeah, so this is a little bit a dilemma for us, but we have actually a pretty good model in knowledge management that is applicable to us in the project management environment. So what do I refer to? It's actually, be with me for the names, Nonaka and Takayoshi, ambiguously, yeah. They actually came up with this, and this is a pretty good description how you can memorize that. Yeah, so knowledge is not inaccessible. So we do actually hand on a lot of it. Yeah, so especially through shared experience or similar experience, where we have a reference framework. Yeah, it's similar projects where we can actually go in with comparative elements. So how do we go through this? You see that there is actually a notion at the bottom, learning by doing. Yeah? And you do something, you internalize the experience, that is what I have there with a spiral. So this is kind of explicit to the implicit, yeah? Or to the tacit, what I have here. And then you have the field building, and then you have to describe it back, this experience that memory is in your memories potentially. Yeah, and due to socialization in the environment, you can share this. Yeah, you have the same experience, but then you have to, of course, verbalize it. Yeah, and make sense of it. You have both the same reference framework. Yeah, you both lived through the situation, but now we try to make the tacit explicit. This is called externalization. We do that normally by talking about it. You can write it down. We have superior senses as well that can give you an insight to things that you may not even have recognized. So an enlargement of our consciousness through other senses. And then we actually can link this through to the explicit knowledge. Yeah, and this is of course an effort that we spend most of the time of, and we will have a look at that different strategies and projects, how we do that with information management. Yeah? But before we actually come to this, you have the combination there of explicit, where you can actually reflect and inform what you want to do. Yeah? So it informs what you know, and you can try new things. So this is a spiral, and it's never ending. This is kind of the dilemma. Yeah. So there comes a point where you are more confident, but what is the implicit notion here? The more you know, what is the problem with that, with the spiral? Do we know more and more? This is slightly cryptic, but okay, the spiral does actually open up. Yeah, so the more you know, the more you realize what you don't know yet. Yeah, so it's a very tragic dilemma. Yeah, so everybody that does a master dissertation will know what they don't yet know in that refined topic. Yeah, that is a dilemma, but still you can make very informed, good questions afterwards. Yeah, and you can steer it a lot better. Yeah. Okay, I've broken it down. So socialization is really the tacit to tacit, sharing experience via direct conveyance. Yeah, so you're on the same experience effectively. Yeah? So you are there in the spatial situation. You are there on the same project. Yeah, and perspectives differ. So this is quite interesting actually. Then externalization, tacit to explicit. This is really trying to articulate the tacit knowledge into explicit concepts. I disagree a little bit with this. Yeah, we have refined that. We don't actually talk about tacit knowledge in that environment anymore. We try to achieve full explicit concepts to give a good description. But again, those models have been refined as well. And then the combination, explicit to explicit, yeah, structuring conceptions into knowledge systems, providing reference frameworks. Yeah? And those kinds of projects you're facing, certain issues, you can experience it in that way. This is when you have to react. Yeah, so those are ideas behind it. Then you have the internalization, that is explicit to tacit, using those frameworks to actually apply it to your sensual experience and kind of preparing what you want to do if this happens in that situation. Yeah? So embodying explicit into tacit operational knowledge. We can do that in many ways. Yeah? Training, preparation, mental scenarios, and so forth. So managing knowledge in a project is quite an interesting one, because you have already noticed that there's a very personal notion to this, and it entails as well in the project team. Yeah, so depending on how we recruit our team, we have people that have more knowledge of similar projects or less knowledge. And sometimes less knowledge is actually an advantage. Yeah. So when we come actually to manage this, this can be a little bit a dangerous encounter. Yeah. So you see here sitting in a small dinghy. Yeah. You have your system prepared. You think you know what you don't know, but then you realize actually in proportion to what's around you, you're not really equipped. There's too much to cover. And in projects we have this dilemma, so we have to come to a conclusion how we can actually use from knowledge management and all these things that we could measure, functional things, to our project context. Yeah, don't overwhelm the project context with data. That is when it feels like this, you know, a white shark following your little dinghy. And you know, in proportions, this is not good. If the 7-meter white shark follows your 3-meter dinghy, he's probably considering if you're eatable. So this is not good. So there are other ways of looking at it. Yeah, we want to arrive at the enjoyable experience, and this is, you know, like discovering the beauty of knowledge, what it can bring to our project. So it's turning the environment around. So how can we do this? People have actually researched that for quite some time, because we have a massive issue with projects. We are normally not very good in knowledge management, so we have tried to get our head around that. So the easiest way of looking at it at a conceptual level is really using from the knowledge management what is essential to us in the project, and that depends from project to project. Yeah, if we what are artifacts in our kitchen example? We talked in the seminars a little bit of cooking potentially. So where is the knowledge? Do you actually cook with your family and then copy it and you taste it in between? Or do you go by recipe? Now this is like codified information. Measurement, yeah, so how much do we need? Yeah, you write it down. That is information management as a premises, yeah. Maybe you did a little bit of both. You cooked with your parents or friends, and then wrote notes for yourself when it becomes complicated. Now that would be one way of capturing this in the project cooking. So there is an overlap, and Hanish and his colleagues have actually looked at that in some detail and tried to frame it. I have to admit, in this paper it wasn't that successful. There's actually Lindner, who I refer to now, who has managed this a lot better. So he pointed actually out, Lindner and Wald, the increasing knowledge intensity of work contents and projectification of business. So this was, we are doing more activities, more business with projects. This is good for us. Yeah? Give a rise to a need for management of knowledge in and between temporary organizations. So they actually, this is in 2010, they have actually a refined model, and in 2011 they published this, which was really good. This is like creation of project knowledge in project organizations. So they came up with 5 types. Yeah, so where is knowledge actually generated? Yeah, and you can see at the top we have a timeline. Yeah, so and then at the bottom we have a permanent organization, departments and divisions, or maybe the project office. Yeah, this is often as well to refer to, and then you have a temporary organizations. Those are the projects. Yeah, so just to talk you through, the first type of knowledge that he actually identified was the knowledge about the current project. Yeah, so if you are the project manager or you are in it with your team, yeah, then you have you have knowledge about the project, But you have a second type. You have as well the intra-project knowledge. Yeah, and this can be very interesting to have actually a look what you are doing in the challenge in comparison with another project. So intra-project knowledge is available in every project if you want. Then we have a third notion that is knowledge from upstream projects. So you have been on a project before and now you're actually trying to apply this to the future project. Yeah, and again, then we had the fourth one that was indirectly what I already hinted, knowledge between the projects in parallel. And then last but not least, and this is a consistent one, the permanent organization. Yeah? So if you have a project management office and you talk to each other and you are part of the team, that is kind of where the knowledge comes together. Yeah? And this differs over time. So to make sense of this, once again, knowledge about projects represents a general overview of knowledge about current and past projects. Yeah, so this was number one, if you want. Yeah. Then number two, intra-project knowledge relates to the methodology and communication practices within the project. Yeah, so that was literally in the bubble, yeah, for example, project A or project B, as they are. Then you have the knowledge transferred from past or upstream projects. That was literally the transfer, yeah, when you have completed project A to another project. Yeah, and then the number four was knowledge transferred between current projects. This was a comparison. Yeah, and then number five, any knowledge transferred between the temporary project organization, yeah, to achieve what you are after, and any related supporting permanent organizations that may exist. Yeah. The literature suggests actually something terrifying at that point. They often explain that the permanent organization should be organized by human resource management, yeah, and that the need for project management office is not essential. The research that we have done actually suggests the opposite. So we have actually a paper at the moment that we hope will be published very soon, that is under review, where we actually point exactly the opposite out. Yeah, especially if you are a young project manager, you come in the company, the best place to be is in the project management office, where you can talk to your colleagues and ask how they have actually dealt with past situations that you are experiencing. Now that is a very strong mechanism, and it generates as well a certain belonging, yeah, which is very important. Okay, so why actually project knowledge management? In its simplest form, I have already indicated that knowledge management is really about encouraging people to share knowledge and ideas to create value-adding products and services. I will rehearse that as well at the end. And as you can see, there's a strong interlink as well with support function like information management. Yeah? So knowledge will be used for developing new knowledge, ideas and insights. This is really a dominant thing that we have at the project level. Yeah? So this is very functional. We are not necessarily after deep data mining at that point and like coming up with a thorough repository, which are often the answers for knowledge management and information management. Yeah? Okay, the objectives of the project knowledge management can be kind of broken down, and again here Hannes actually with his team leads us to quite some reasonable things. So most of all, it's important to avoid duplication of work. Yeah? Second of all, learning by repetition is something where we can actually iterate or practice, yeah? And then promoting innovation, realizing what we can actually improve, harmonizing methods, standardization where we can, yeah? That we have a thorough framework that we can use as well in terms of competitiveness, and of course allocating of resources that you can actually better project. Yeah? So in other words, you kind of can foresee where certain resources are needed and when they were actually maybe in past projects not used sufficiently. Yeah. Okay, if we adapt this now to the knowledge management, to the project management environment, we come actually to certain settings, yeah, and those are often it's more the explicit way, so the information management notion, but the most dominant ones can be summarized really in those. There are many more. They kind of fit in those categories. Yeah, and they come often to knowledge being created, and then the administration that is normally quite fuzzy. Here they're actually more talking about information management, and then disseminating it and utilization and I can't even say it. Productization. Yeah. So in a way, it's a notion to refine it really the knowledge into information that have been codified. From that you draw the key data out, and you draw it basically back when you need it. Yeah, but this is information, quite frankly. And Leibowitz and Lindner and as well Anna Muller, they all go in this, and we have actually a closer look at it in information management. Yeah, so this is something that you will come across. Unfortunately, I don't have an answer of cleaning this up easily, but this is an approach. So, in a way, what I suggest is really, when you look at knowledge management, especially in the project setting, to look pragmatically, especially with a focus on the temporary organization. So here we are after sharing knowledge and best practices. And this is a very weak terminology, best practices. Here it's what worked, what has worked for you, and why it worked, versus other examples maybe that haven't worked for you. So it's a honest lesson learned strategy as well. And then instilling responsibility for knowledge sharing, so giving it as well time. If your organization just literally puts a project manager in when it comes to the implementation, then you have missed here a big deal. Capturing and reusing past experiences, embedding, of course, the knowledge in products, services, and processes. Here it's as well a question of realizing adaptability from other relating areas and facilitating that. And, of course, producing knowledge as a product. So actually a lot of products tell you a lot about the knowledge. This is normally embodied in the designs or actually artifacts is normally what we call that. But you can actually draw from that a lot. And when you see how it's done, or you try to do it yourself, you realize as well the challenges in it. Driving knowledge generation for innovation is an interesting one, relies often on having a diverse team. So you are often after new ways doing the same thing. So here you need to be as well open and facilitated accordingly. And then, of course, mapping networks of experts. So in other words, this is going a step back. Who has worked in a similar terrain before? Who can we relate to? This is like kind of a phone book in a company, or a wiki maybe, that is about personal people's experience. And then building and mining customer knowledge bases. This is quite important as well, but this is again, here we are going towards archival data, which is very difficult to assess in a project setting. And understanding and measuring the value of knowledge. This is often an exercise if you have to promote knowledge management in your company, because nobody thinks it's worth doing. That is often a good starting point, because this is easy to do, and it's very profitable, quite frankly. And then, of course, leveraging intellectual assets. Here it's really about bringing the assets in when you need them in your project, being aware. So here we come often back to a wiki or a phone book approach. So Holstead has actually discussed that quite briefly in the setting of the project, and it's debatable if all are applicable, but if you're interested, it's certainly a good start to read. So when we come actually to the knowledge management, there's often a question, what are actually the underlying success factors to project knowledge management? And Yeah, different studies have been emphasized with different tools. There are qualitative studies that have actually looked at this. So this is again Hanish and his team, and they looked at culture and communication. So do you have actually a proactive culture? In other words, do people talk about what they have done in the project, or is it kind of like, I won't tell you about my project? Yeah? We have actually both. Yeah? So I have I had a few dissertation students that have actually looked at that culture in companies, in certain companies in construction. If you're in France or Germany, knowledge management is very difficult. People don't want to talk about how they do their projects. And if you ask, hey, how have you managed that? There are like snippet comments like, oh, do you not know how to project manage it? Well, why are you a project manager? So this is a very welcoming point. So again, there are some countries that have that as an inherent culture. That is very bad. Yeah. So then you have to promote probably knowledge management before you come actually to a sharing. Yeah. So as an industry, quite frankly, we know that those industries normally can't compete with the ones that do knowledge sharing. Yeah. This is very simple. So then you have as well information and communication technologies that can actually enhance that. Yeah, and here it comes often to the notion: do you have policies that restrict information exchange, or is it a platform that is made to share and to have easy access to the information that you are after, and is it clearly communicated? Yeah, so there are different technologies that have been applied. A one-stop shop is normally the winning concept for projects. Yeah, and then it's as well a question how you actually organize it, and the methods of actually capturing it. We have a look at those in a second. Anna Tumuna, and actually it was a whole team there. It's just that he made a publication for that. He came as well with a qualitative study along. He actually went a step further and said, like, it's not just the culture, it depends really on the people and how they're confident to share. This is actually what we found in the UK a lot, especially when we look at larger projects where you have like many teams, many project managers working together. We find that older project managers, yeah, seniority matters. They often say, I've been so long in this industry, why wouldn't I share what I have come across? I've repeated so many times the same mistakes, and before I actually learned from it. Yeah, so those are normally people that want to share. Sadly, yeah, although a lot of my students have seen kind of talks like that or elements of it, sadly, young generations don't want to share. They say like, oh no, I don't feel confident. I say potentially the wrong thing. Yeah, so you notice that there's an overlap in the culture. But sadly, young people seem to be not very open to talk about their experience and what they actually anticipated to do. Yeah? And often that has implication. So if you're on a mentoring or work shadowing program, it becomes uncomfortable. Yeah? So it is really the step to realize that the mentor or work shadowing or potentially coach as well is not there to embarrass you or to tell you that you're not capable of doing it. It's the other way around. He's there as a supportive element to show you alternative ways of doing it and for you to decide what you want to actually use. Yeah? So this is very important. Technology tools again, yeah, and then they looked actually more at processes of capturing and idealizing it in a certain way. Yeah. Then there was as well Lindner and Wald that did a quantitative study which was quite impressive. There they came out with culture and leadership attributes, and leadership was very interesting. Leadership was kind of championing. Yeah, but they had a clear correlation, unfortunately again, between seniority, yeah, or years in industry. This time it wasn't the age, it was actually how long you had been there. And that there was a very positive correlation to actually enabling then a culture of sharing. So they would interfere with comments that would potentially stop knowledge sharing. Yeah? So if somebody would ask, hey, can you show me what you did in your project management plan to actually deliver this with the supply chain? And somebody would say, no, this is my project management plan. figure out your own, they would actually step in and say like, no, let's compare the elements. And that was quite interesting. We had that in a few case studies. This works especially well if you have like a shared open plant office. Yeah, and you have the champion within it. This is not always necessarily the case. And again, they correlated it as well, ICT systems. This is very simplified. Yeah? They just look, do you have one? If yes, how have you named it? Does it relate to the permanent organization or is it project specific? And then they had as well a look at organization and processes. In the study that we did with a few students, this is actually the paper from one of the students. She had a specific look at culture, technology and processes, and she focused on knowledge management between project managers. Yeah, and this was a wonderful study because the empiric showed that in this particular automotive company, it worked wonderful well. Yeah, so it was very welcoming. The senior project manager became normally a mentor for the junior project manager. This is optimal. This is when you have like regular feedback meetings, and in some tough projects, the mentor actually came along to work shadow and share experience. Yeah, and then they had even feedback sessions that were actually facilitated. So this was really good stuff. This doesn't always happen, but it's desirable. Yeah, you should see her when she actually presented her paper at the World Congress. She was very. You could see she had confidence about what she was doing because she had the feedback loop. Yeah, she had learned along the way. So it's a wonderful environment to work in if you have that. Okay, so under the culture, then it was as well technology. A lot of the young generation are actually kind of teacher of technology. Yeah, so bring your team as well up to speed, especially if you're very much a fan of it. Yeah, this is particular for if you're interested in things like BIM or there's a PIM version as well, yeah, project information systems or project information modeling. Yeah, if you are advocate of that, make sure that you can actually use it, that everybody has access to the technology, that it doesn't alienate. And with the processes, we really came to a notion of, this is always an interesting one. It was a community of practice. They shared their narratives. They told stories. Yeah, this is a very strong method actually, telling small narratives about it. Success factors from that study kind of resonate as well with the other studies. Yeah. Culture really came down to shared beliefs, values, practices of a group or groups within the organization. Yeah, and that was a very important element to see as well as such. Yeah, so we kind of had that as well when we looked at shaping a team. Yeah, when it comes to bringing a team together, you probably experienced this in your group. It's a key essence. Yeah? And the information the support by information technology tools has proven to be necessary but not sufficient factor for the quality of project knowledge management. Yeah, so this is why I actually tried to separate them. Next week we have a look at that, and with this you always have to look at your supply chain, otherwise it doesn't make sense. Yeah, if you have information technology that you use in your company and your project, and you have a supply chain that don't have access to this information network or don't feed the information in, then you are running always behind trying to update your information system. Yeah? Then you're not really managing the project anymore, you are managing the information. Yeah? So last but not least, easy to use standards and processes should be chosen on the purpose, since the aim is an easy usage with as little as possible additional effort. Yeah? So in the project, we are time pressure. We don't have time to familiarize for a very long time with archival data and sophisticated data mining methods that allow you access to data. Same with the project management file. Yeah? So keep it functional. Communication tools are there to communicate, not to be legally informed. For that you have legal documents, I hope. Yeah? Okay, actually at that point, where are we time-wise, I was sprinting through quite a bit. I would like to make the break now. We make like a 10 minutes break, and then I come along with a few examples and a little bit entertainment as well, yeah?
I have a question. What is intellectual assets that you just mentioned? Do you mean people?
Intellectual assets can be people. Yeah, intellectual. Well, this is how you normally evaluate it in a team. Yeah, so you bring an expert in, for example. Yeah, and that would be the justification for paying more.
So consultants as well, yeah? You mean like if you bring
Yeah,
like
consultants
experts?